Now we will move to the self-care plan part of this workshop. This is a part of an earlier workshop that I had done for clinical supervisors. However, I think it applies to all of us, and no matter what our area of work specialization might be. In this workshop, we'll examine the single item measure of burnout, reflect on your current self-care plan, explore the fusion of your body, mind, and spirit elements, reflect on your mission in life and current life goals, determine your doing and being balance within your life, review your current self-care strategies and consider adjusting your current goals, and determine whether to add additional self-care strategies. As we see here, the single item measure of burnout has 5 potential choices. So I'll just simply read them. You may want to rest by closing your eyes and reflect on which one may fit. But there's a place on the one of the forms for you to write the score of the measure that you decide accurately fits your current situation. So the first option is, I enjoy my work and I have no symptoms of burnout. 2, occasionally I'm under stress and I don't always have as much energy as I once did, but I don't feel burned out. 3, I'm definitely burning out and have one or more symptoms of burnout, such as physical and or emotional exhaustion. 4, the symptoms of burnout that I'm experiencing won't go away. I think about frustration at work a lot. Or 5, I feel completely burned out and often wonder if I can go on. I'm completely at a point where I may need some changes or may need to seek some sort of help. And this is important as you decide which one fits, but certainly it's important to seek help if you're feeling as burned out as we have described here in 4 and 5, and even perhaps in 3. So this is the single item measure, and I have the reference here to the authors of this particular instrument. And as you'll see in the workbook that I provided for you, my website has other burnout measures that you may look at. But I think this single item measure helps us kind of get a handle about what's currently going on in our situation. We would like to talk about what elements are part of one's self-care plan. Dr. Bucky, I'll let you start kind of beginning to talk about this image that we have on the screen.
We talked a few slides ago about some of the things that we can do to take care of ourselves. And of course, the first thing and the most prevalent thing in social media, in the literature, is physical, right? We need to do something to discharge that energy constructively. And then, of course, we usually have a benefit in doing that as well. So it ranges from getting more sleep to doing exercise. Many people like yoga, many people like the sofa. So we have a number of different elements there under the physical to take care of your body that we want you to look at. And secondly, we're looking at work, better time management. And we know that those of us who take care of others probably have the worst track record of taking care of ourselves. So just a little word to the wise, and I'm sure you know that already. We also can look at setting boundaries around our work, both in scheduling the time as well as not overextending ourselves. And we take breaks, and let's make sure that we can stay creative. Looking at the resources that we have for taking care of ourselves. Everything from doing our own personal and business planning, such as budgeting and saving money and managing our money, to paying bills. And finally, in our mind, defining and personalizing our space through hobbies, maybe through setting some goals, being more creative, doing a creative project, stabilizing some things in our life that have gotten out of control while we've been so busy taking care of others and working, as well as giving ourselves a safe, secure, clean space to work in, free of clutter, and that promotes for us a healthy environment.
And then moving to the area of social concerns, family and friends, making sure we take time to spend appropriate experiences with family and friends. And in this sense, we move from the doing elements of our life, because doing has to do with our work and other things. And unfortunately, we usually, who we are is what we do in a lot of ways, especially professionally, but we sometimes ignore our sense of being. And even while you're being, you may be doing something, but it's more focused on being who you are, and who more to be who we are authentically than with family and friends. And so I think this is a real thing to reflect on. And then, of course, the groups we work on, because people know us by how we present ourselves in these areas, and being sensitive to our boundaries. You know, some of us need more space than others in terms of, solitary time as an example. And trying to find spaces for that is incredibly important and helpful, because we don't rejuvenate without having the time to have that space. And I think it's important to attend to that if you're one person like me that needs it. Also, developing a social support system, particularly professionally as well as individually, being able to call someone if we really need to talk. I think that's certainly an important social element that can be helpful to us and reduce stress, certainly. And then looking at positive social media, things that are more affirming than attacking or complaining, because our environment today is so full of negative energy. Where can one go for an area that they might have just a positive experience with others? And then as well, communication. How do we communicate? Do we not communicate? Are we withdrawn? Looking at how we might utilize that as well as part of our self-care plan to help us in our day-to-day kind of experience. And then in the area of the emotional, working on stress management, whether you meditate, whether you breathe, whatever you do, beginning to look at, if that's not enough, what else might you be able to include, as well as coping skills. I found as I've gotten older, things that really were important to me earlier on, which were really not that important, I find now to be laughable. But I say to myself, I've spent years being obsessed about this, and now there's no purpose. And why was there to begin with? It just depends on our focus of our lens, I think, at times, and realizing that sometimes what we make so important isn't really in the big picture in terms of protecting our emotional expenditure of energy and feelings. And then I think journaling can be helpful as one tool for some people. And certainly talking with friends, I think verbal discussion helps us hear ourselves speak about what's concerning us. And by hearing it, we have yet another dimension of understanding, perhaps, and gaining insight about, wow, this is really not, I'm tired of hearing myself complain. Sometimes our friends will listen forever, but sometimes when we talk so much, we kind of get the cue that, geez, I need to let go of this. I've been talking about it for the last 5 years or something. And then pets, I think, are critical friends in our lives as well that can help us. I refer to Josie, the dog here, our canine, as my antidepressant. She makes me laugh. We engage differently with our pets, but it can be a very positive, life-giving experience for both. And then, if need be, to seek therapy when needed, to work through more complex issues that we're not able to do or complete with ourselves. And then in the area of the spiritual, certainly taking time alone, as I was talking about, meditation can be extremely helpful, especially if non-local place where we go in terms of that consciousness, we find a non-judgmental presence of love present that we can kind of be wrapped in. I think that understanding that in the bigger picture, the great, whatever we would call it, source, God, the focus is on love and not judgment. And sometimes it's helpful to get into a space where we can kind of decompress and actually experience being in the sense of who we really are authentically and how we're accepted. And then, of course, places in nature. I'm big about forests and trees, and redwood forests particularly are my favorite places to go. I experience a sense of the divine there as well. And that connection, which one might call sacred space, which could be in many different places, and attending to meaningful coincidences, this idea of synchronicity. I think we find, as I reflected on it some time back, there seemed to be a lot more going on than I was paying attention to. So as you focus in certain areas, you'll probably notice that there is more coincidence, meaningful coincidence that may be happening that you may have missed in the past. And then there's extrasensory elements as well in the non-local space of consciousness where we go for information, where we've been using space, or it's not space because space is here, but where we've been in realms where we've prayed for years. That's really an extrasensory kind of place where we encounter the presence of the divine in a different way. Mystical experience sometimes comes upon us without begging it, but if we have experiences that we might construe as mystical, what does that say to us at this point in our life, that this would emerge from the non-local consciousness that's out there? And then self-forgiveness and forgiveness of others is a critical element. And as I was doing therapy and working with clients over the years, I realized a lot of their stuckness in life had to do with an inability to forgive themselves or forgive others, which kept them hooked and not allowing them to let go and move on with life. And so those are a number of things that Julia and I reflected on that we wanted to share in terms of when you're looking at your self-care, use this sort of as an image that you might look at, and then think about, how much doing and how much being is going on in your life. And, being could just be sitting by yourself, or it could be in that the areas we've talked about. But how much of that do you have, and how much of it would you want versus the doing part? Because you're more than the work that you do. And I think we all need to kind of embrace that and recognize that, we're much more than what the work is that we do. And that, I think, is important. Next, I want to just quickly
George,
go over.
before we leave that, I have to close with my closure on this slide. Remember, we're not human doings, we're human beings. And so we hope that, as George alluded, you will take some of these recommendations and this entire section and pause over them for a while, especially if you feel that it's time for you to take a break or be given a break or give yourself a break.
Thank you. That's my spiritual director, who I've seen for a number of years, always tells me that it's not human being, it's not human doing, it's human being, which I think is important. In your notebook, you'll find self-care plan pages. So I start out at the top with my current doing and being situation. So place a check on where you think you are in the continuum there between being and doing. And then if you feel you would like to change your position on that, this is sort of a SUDS kind of scale for you to use. So this is going to take a lot longer than we can do in this workshop. What is your mission in life? That may take a bit about framing, or your current life goals. I mean, this takes a little more time to think about than just doing it in the next 10 minutes. So take some time after the workshop to come back here if you feel that you want to continue to work on your self-care plan. And then what you see coming up on the right side of your page, there's a table that says the following are already part of my self-care strategies. So you'll check off what you're already doing, because my guess is you're already doing something as it is. And then the next table has to do with things that you might want to add to your current approach to self-care. And then below that, listing needs you wish to work on, and jot down specific tasks and behaviors that will bring renewed sense of balance to your life. So I encourage you to work on this in a time where you're able to spend some time to reflect. And it may take you a few times to come back and forth to this if you're really working at trying to put this together, and continue to update it periodically as you would. And then some reflection questions here in terms of this whole self-care. Evaluate your self-care strategies used in the past and new ones that you will add to your options. So strategies in the past you may find worked then but don't work now. So it's okay to acknowledge and let go of those as you add new ones that fit your life situation now. Because when you were 20, you were a lot different in terms of how you were in the world than you are at, say, 40, 50 or older. And then ideas for your consideration. Think about triggers that let you know when you're experiencing practice fatigue. Do you find you're more grumpy? Are you tired all the time? What are the triggers? Because those help us track things when we're in the fray of life. And when you're aware of fatigue or burnout, what do you do to address that feeling or experience? So you can come in with a plan now if you don't have one or you haven't given much thought to it, so that it's easier. Because I think if we work through in our minds what we might do in reference to a particular situation, it's easier for us to figure out what it was that we were thinking rather than trying to get really distracted and not know what to do. And then the self-care plan. Here's where the material we provided in the notebook helps you develop your strategies of your current situation in life. Julie, would you like to add?
Would I like to add something?
Yeah, I don't know. You want to?
You probably feel as if we have discussed self-care ad nauseum, but my rather lengthy career in helping others has told me again and again and again that I will push myself beyond where I really should be in order to do something for someone else, or in order to meet a deadline for the agency or meet a report deadline for the client or the court. And we here have just attempted to emphasize from our dual perspectives that you are not to be compromised. And you, of course, as George just told you and walked you through your plan and now some considerations for your plan, you are the person that, unfortunately, because you're the professional, get to evaluate you first. And you know yourself better than anyone. So we just encourage you to provide that care and take care of you that other people need so much in their lives.